Hello, hello, hello. Good to see you. You get fairy dust, I get fairy dust, little Amelie gets fairy dust, and we are going to talk about Codependent No More. We are on the Remove the Victim chapter and challenge. She says on page 89, I love this because I can too. I can usually spot a codependent within the first 5 minutes of meeting or talking. So she can spot them in the first 5 minutes, I can spot them in the first 5 minutes, and you can spot them in the first 5 minutes. It's like you can hear it. Here are some examples she gives. He or she will offer me unrequested help. The person will keep talking to me, although he or she is uncomfortable and wants to discontinue the conversation. The person begins, and that's me. Like, I've been that person. Like, I don't want to do this, but I keep talking, just keep, all that. And the person begins the relationship by taking responsibility for me. So if it's the other person that's feeling uncomfortable, how they are, they're rescuing the person that they're talking to because they don't want them to know that they're uncomfortable. But that's the thing. Like, we can see it. Like, it's right there in front of us. The pickle is that we've been taught to pretend like we don't see it. We've been taught, that's part of codependency, is that it's this, oh, I'm just making that up. Like, I'm just making that up. They're really fine talking to me. Like, I'm just imagining it. Codependents are trained from birth to pretend that they don't know what they know. And part of recovery is you get to know what you know. You don't need to wonder. You don't need, are they just talking to me because, yeah, absolutely. Is that person flirting with? Yes, they are flirting with you. If you get a hunch that they're doing something, that means it's happening. You have very high social intelligence. So if you get, and I heard this the other day, like, somebody said, well, I know that she meant well. It's like, no, she didn't. If you have to say that to make nice of that mean thing that was said, that's you working overtime to not know what you know. Somebody didn't mean well, and you know that they didn't mean well. When I hear, I'm sure she was just having a hard day or something like that. It's like you're pretending like you don't know what you know. And that the jig is up. Like, it's time to start knowing what you know and trust it. Trust that it's true. Okay, so let's keep reading down. We're going to skip a few paragraphs at the bottom of page 89. She says, caretaking doesn't help. It causes problems. And we lie to ourselves, that pretending like I am helping. No, you're not helping. When we take care of people and do things that we don't want to do, we ignore our personal needs, wants, and feelings. We put ourselves aside. Now, this is really important because one of the hallmarks of codependency is that if there is any self-care involved or any type of let me take care of myself in this situation, we feel guilty, we feel bad, we feel that we are being selfish, which is by design. Because if you are indoctrinated to being a codependent, if you're indoctrinated to not know what you know, if you're indoctrinated to take care of other people at your own expense, then the guilt and the fear and the feelings of selfishness, that's part of why you keep doing it, because you're trying to avoid feeling those feelings that are incorrect. Your feelings aren't incorrect, but how perfect, like if we were going to design, like if we were going to how do I get this child to take care of me no matter what. How do I do that? Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll make them think when they do anything that takes attention off of me that they're being selfish. Oh, that's genius. That's so genius. And I want them to feel bad and guilty when they're not rescuing me. Oh, this is so genius. I don't have to do shit. I had the insight yesterday that, oh my God, like, you know, why do codependents or anybody who has trauma, why do we fight ourselves so much? Like, why do we resist self-care, self-love, self-respect, self-confidence, self-knowledge? Like, what's up with that? And it's like, oh, trauma, CPTSD, is the autoimmune disease of the psyche. And so if you have an autoimmune disease physically, that means you're healthy. If the immune system is there to, when an unhealthy thing comes in, it's like, get the soldiers ready and fight it. And so with an autoimmune disease, the paraphrasing, don't believe anything I say, is when the immune system fights itself. And so that's what codependency is, and why a lot of people don't recover from it, because those guilty feelings and those feelings of selfishness are the autoimmune disease, like attacking you so you don't change, so you don't heal, so you're not in recovery. I really like what she says here. We put ourselves aside. So that's one word, ourselves. I separate those words. We put ourselves aside. And of course we do. That's by design. That is part of the autoimmune. It's to attack you. So we put ourselves aside. That's part of how we stay codependent, is because, for me, my understanding of all CPTSD, including the fawn response codependency, aka codependency, is that we are not allowed to have a self. We are not allowed to have a self. So that's why we don't, if you can't have self-esteem if you don't have a self. You think the problem is esteem. So we go and we get all these accolades and we do this shit. We think the problem is that we don't have esteem. The problem is, even if we get esteem, we don't believe it or take it in. That's why we don't like compliments. That's why that any of our achievements are not enough. Because we don't have a self. We don't have the foundation of a self. So I like how she says it here. It's true. We put ourselves aside. So we take ourself and we put it aside, and then we don't have one. So then we don't have to worry about self-care, self-love, self-knowledge. We can just let the autoimmune disease of the psyche, we just let the guilt and fear and crazy making fill the space of where the self should be. We let our busy taking care of other people, hustle to try to be enough. That's where we put all of that, replaces the self. And so when it comes down to, are you proud of your PhD? Are you proud that you won that race? Are you proud that you blah, blah, blah? It's like, no, my time could have been better. Or, well, there are other doctors in my family, so it's not that big of a deal. Or all the things, because we don't have a self to stick our accomplishments to. We don't have a self to stick our care to. That's why I still struggle with self-care, because I don't even, what do I like? What do I, and self-care is, when we start to heal, all of that will be very uncomfortable, of course, because we're not used to having a self. We're used to having guilt. We're used to having shame. We're used to having, our constant hustle of worthiness, as Brene Brown says, or, just this constant, like, what does everybody need? And remember, ... underneath all of this is trauma. So it's not your fault. It's not your fault. But that's why it's so hard to heal. And that's why I am an advanced bitch, because I'm not satisfied with not having a self. I'm not going to live that way anymore. And so a lot of people are satisfied with that. For them, it's enough to just stay codependent. And for me, it's not. For me, that's settling. Like, that's just settling for my trauma responses. In my book, I talk about the Irreverent Trust Guide. I talk about there's a path, and the path, there's two paths that we can take. So we find out, oh shit, I think I have the fawn response. I think I'm codependent, and we're at the fork in the road. And at this fork is self-hate, self-loathing, self-disgust, self-frustration, is chasing adults, is da. And that's a very hard way to live. And here's the other part, is healing, is becoming vulnerable, is trusting yourself. That is also a very hard path. And so you get to choose which hard path you are going to take. But I have chosen the advanced path, the path of advanced personal growth work. Because if these are both hard paths, then bitch, I only want the consequences of the path that's going to get me myself back. I don't want the consequences of codependency and chasing and crazy making and rush and making nice. I'm not, because I don't want the consequences of that life anymore. I've lived plenty of life with those consequences. Absolutely not. No more. I am done. Am I on that path imperfectly of healing? Yes. I fuck up all the time. But still, I have gotten the consequences. And I like those consequences more of this very hard path that we're talking about. She says, caretakers, codependents, look so responsible, but we aren't. We don't assume responsibility for our highest responsibility, to ourselves. So how I would say that, we don't assume responsibility for our highest responsibility. We don't take responsibility for having a self. And that is your job if you're going to be advanced. Again, not everybody can be. It's too hard. Who the fuck wants to do this? Like, who the fuck wants to? None of us. But bitch, we want the consequences of the healthy, healing, whole path. And what I can tell you, as somebody who's been doing this for a really long fucking time, and bitch, I crawled on that path. I crawled and I cried and I struggled. And then sometimes I'd take this path because I would relapse back into my addiction, or I'd relapse back into codependency. I'm like, whoop, get back on this path that I want to be on. And do you know that, bitch, the consequences, they get exponentially better. That's what I have found. That is what I have found. It's just, and that path becomes, in my experience, fucking magical. And you will get the help that you need. Help is always available at Hogwarts for those who ask and for those who deserve it. And if you are walking the path of advanced personal growth work, bitch, you deserve it. So you'll get what you need on that path, but it's not an easy path, but neither is the other one. It's just familiar. It's just familiar. That's what this path of status quo, the path of just, oh, well, I can't win. Oh, well, I give up. Oh, well, it's too hard. That is the path of, that's just staying on the path of trauma. And for me, when I was on that path, I just kept rewounding and rewounding and rewounding. And I think, unfortunately, those consequences get exponentially worse over time. So this is a big deal. This is deep work. You might need some self-care after this, but it's time to go on a hunt. Let's look for ourselves. Where did it go? Let's go get her. Let's go get that bitch. Like, she's just waiting. She's waiting in the wings. So let's get her. Okay. I love you. Hope that's helpful. Bye. Bye.